game lead. Two best teams in baseball and Houston. They have a 25-game lead, and we're in late July. We got 2 more months of the regular season. So the Yankees and the Dodgers are just running away with it. Doug Gottlieb is joining us, the Duggar, Fox Sports Radio, after our show. It's my favorite time of the year. The camp's open. I love this time of the year. So let's start with the Odell Beckham piece in GQ. Odell, you know, he's not afraid. He's very honest about his opinion of how the Giant situation worked. Does anything bother you with how Odell sees his Giant career?
Well, he didn't feel like he got the respect he deserved. I always thought that athletes equated salary to respect.
Right.
And after 3 months of good behavior, after there was a video of him in a hotel room with what looked like cocaine with a woman, he got the biggest contract in the history of the sport for his position. If that's not respect, I don't know what is.
Right.
So whatever happened from that point until the time they ultimately traded him, you know, reputations become earned. And he hadn't stayed healthy,
yeah.
You know. And I think a bigger thing is he keeps saying how he wants to win. And yet anyone can say they want to win. Do you want to do the little things that it takes? Whether it's buying into your quarterback, no matter how much we all agree that Eli Manning has seen his better days, that doesn't mean what your public face should be. Doing interviews with rappers about your quarterback or about your struggles, and then, you know, late in the season, onside kick, a chance for a big win, and he bails.
Yeah.
He bails on the kick. Don't tell me you want to win. Go get that football.
Yeah, no, that's a fair criticism.
He strikes me as remarkably talented and remarkably immature, and I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think he's the first NBA player. Like, he's not the biggest star to play wide receiver, or we've always had the diva wide receivers. And if you want to get to guys that sold shoes, Deion Sanders sold shoes and was a better player. He's the best shutdown cover corner in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
He played 2 sports. He had his own shoe from Nike. He was a huge, huge megastar, and there were times in which he was an issue, but for the most part, his teams won. Came out of retirement and won with the Ravens. Mike Vick was a breakthrough superstar.
Yeah, he was.
Off the field, obviously derailed him. Some on the field derailed him, but people forget that he was the new face of the league, and he was cool. He was hip. He had a shoe. He was the cover of Madden. He was a video game. So we have actually seen this before, and we've seen many guys who are truculent wide receivers derail teams before. And the irony to it is this, is the greatest season a wide receiver has ever had was by Calvin Johnson,
yes.
Right? His team won 4 games that year.
Yeah.
The irony to a wide receiver is oftentimes the guys that put up the most numbers are on the worst teams.
Yeah, no, this is something we've talked about before, is there have been basketball teams where the guy that leads the league in scoring is on a really average team, and the team is built for him to score, but not built to win.
Kemba Walker.
Yeah, Kemba Walker scores a ton of points. When I look at wide receivers...
DeMarcus Cousins.
Prime example, when Dak came into this league and he had Dez, I thought Dez hurt Dak because Dak was a young quarterback learning a system and felt, I got to throw the ball to Dak or he'll emotionally derail. Do you think...
That's Dante Culpepper, by the way. Remember, Dante Culpepper used to force the ball to Randy Moss, and it derailed that, and the fumbling really derailed Dante Culpepper's career.
But do you think, does Cleveland work because Baker's accurate, Baker's a very good slant thrower, Odell runs the best slant in the league? I can make an argument, 2 arguments. One, Jarvis Landry needs 90 catches. There's just not 60 catches available. Or I can make the argument Baker and Odell is a perfect marriage.
Oh, I think if it's going to work for Odell Beckham Jr., this is probably as good as it gets. It's probably better that he's out of the limelight of the big city so he can just concentrate on football. I think you have Baker's ego and persona, who he defends his own.
Right.
Even to a fault, he defends his own, right? That's Baker's kind of MO. He's all about his teammates. And I do think that Baker kind of understands guys' egos and how to fit in. He can go uptown and downtown, mix with linemen to wide receivers. It doesn't matter. And then Jarvis Landry's Odell Beckham Jr.'s best friend, you know, even before college, they've been lifelong friends. And so if there's somebody who can calm him down when things aren't going well, you have a guy who just started calling plays, and now the head coach who seems to get along quite well with the offense. They have other weapons. They have a good running game, so he's not going to face a double team seemingly on every possession. Yeah, I think all of those things could be great. The problem is there isn't really a culture of winning there.
Right.
They have a very difficult schedule, and though they have more on-paper talent than The Steelers probably have. The Ravens lost their front seven. They were built on their defense. They've lost it, and they're going to try and figure out, can we play how we played with Lamar with a different defense? And then, Cincinnati's coming off a season where they had the worst defense maybe in the history of the league.
Yeah.
So, look, there's a lot of – I think if it's going to work, it'll work in Cleveland. I'm much more bullish on it than you are, but, I think the article and the author who sat with you before me made a great point. If it doesn't go well, Odell Beckham Jr. is a front runner. When things don't go well, he doesn't seem emotionally know how to handle it. Yeah. And the other part, and this is kind of the immaturity part, is, people who are adults, people who are mature, people who have been through some things, they point inward. They go, I should have done this differently. I should have done that differently. Whereas children, it's his fault. It's his fault. It's the Giants' fault. It's Eli's fault. It's Tom Coughlin's fault. It's the media's fault. And that's what Odell Beckham Jr. does. And until I hear out of his mouth, I should have done this, and things would have been better, I will still not be sold that he'll ever live up to the prodigious talent that he actually has.
Yeah, he does. By the way, I want to move to so Tony Romo was talking about Bill Belichick, and I just happen to have two good friends in football who happen to be really, really tight with Belichick, like would vacation with him. And they just speak really highly about him. And they always say the same thing. They're like, he is... maybe it's his mother speaking 7 languages, his dad who helped create scouting or whatever. He's just cerebral. He's curious. He's always learning. He is really a different level. And my friends have had, I've got a friend that's had coached under Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. Still says Belichick. It's like, boo. The gap between Belichick and the rest of the sport feels even greater. I use Coach K. With a talent edge, 2 Final Fours in 15 years. Saban with a talent edge, 24 bowl games, won 14, lost 10. I do feel like Belichick has largely separated himself from a large group of the league. I thought the Super Bowl with McVay was almost embarrassing for McVay. They had like an offense.
There's also something gained from experience. Remember, the other thing is that he has been able, because they haven't had a bad season, but he's also been able to sustain things for so long. Look at when they played the L.A. Chargers. The Chargers have better talent. Now, they ran the benefit of the fact that the Chargers had to beat Baltimore on the road.
And then fly back.
And fly back, and it beat them up a little bit. But just from the idea they took the opening kick. Normally you win the toss, you defer, you play defense, you're at home. You take the opening kick, you march down the field, you play from ahead, and now all of a sudden you put the Chargers on the defensive. In addition to the fact that they slowly but surely evolve every season. They take those first 4 games like the preseason, and they build themselves for postseason football. Now, it helps the fact that they're in the AFC East,
yes,
which not only has it not been competitive in terms of comparing quarterbacks, but also look at all the turnover at coaches. You have all these inexperienced coaches continue to get a shot at a guy who's been there, done that. So they can build their football team simply for the postseason, much the way that Phil Jackson actually did this. Remember, Shaq, he wouldn't get on to Shaq about being in shape at the start of the season. The easiest training camp anyone ever had in the history of the NBA was the Lakers. They would go to Hawaii, they would practice once a day, and they would meditate, right? They meditate. And a lot of the guys, they just fall asleep. But his thing was like, look, I can't beat on him now. I can't go to the whip now. I need to wait until we get to April, May, and then June is when it's important to us. I think because of his experience, because he has Brady, he's been able to still have the same offensive coordinator now for like a half a decade. And because of the division, I think he builds his team for December and January football. And it's like a different sport than the rest of the year. And I do think that he separated himself. I also think that we need to take a breath and realize that Andy Reid has a similar amount of experience. And if not for Dee Ford lining up off sides, we're not talking about the greatness of the Patriots right now.
By the way, there are 2 coaches that if you look at the history of Belichick, Coughlin and Andy Reid have given him matchup problems. Like in those Super Bowls.
And they're also very, very experienced, and they've seen each other. I'll point this one thing out. I said this Friday when I guest hosted for you because you were working furiously on your fly fishing wrist.
So much fun.
It's so sore. I love that they caught you buying coffee already. already.
I know.
Is that here's a little nugget from a couple NFL friends. If you look at the end of the season, Brady was not the same. If you look at I know he lit up the Jets last game of the year. I know he was great against the Chargers, but that was a mismatch because they were running over and through the Chargers, and the Chargers were backpedaling. His arm strength was not the same. You look at the Chargers. They have an older quarterback in Phillip Rivers. He struggled. Drew Brees struggled down the stretch. These great quarterbacks who are freaks about their preparation, and they want to take every rep in preseason. There's a large amount of concern over whether or not they're going to have the arm in December, in January. Now, that's one of the reasons that I think that and their lack of wide receivers, why the Patriots went to more of a power running game. And I think they knew that. That's why they drafted the way they did. But it'll be interesting to see. The Saints are the one team that have Teddy Bridgewater. They could throw him out in the middle of the season and give Brees 2 weeks off.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Because Brees was not the same quarterback.
No.
Everyone talks in that game about the blown pass interference call. But they don't talk about the fact that Drew Brees really, really struggled.
Their last 6 games of the year, the Saints averaged 20 a game. Their first 11, they averaged 37.
Yeah.
They didn't throw the ball over the top the last month and a half of the season. They couldn't. They literally couldn't throw the ball downfield.
I mean, look, you get to be 40 years old. You're not the same guy. I mean, look, Manny Pacquiao was great on
But that's
on
one fight.
Well, it was also one fight, but also he got ahead early, and then he was able to take advantage of his quickness and play from ahead, and he was smart about when he rested. But Manny Pacquiao lost many of the final 6 rounds because he's old, and he's been doing this forever and used his brain as well as his athletic ability. But going into this NFL season, we're betting all of our money on these 39, 38, 41-year-old quarterbacks. And if you look at last year, and it's going to get worse this year because they're a year older, there's a big concern. Will they be able to throw the football the same once you get to December and January?
The Duggar, Fox Sports Radio. Good seeing you, buddy.
Great to see you.
You got to do fly fishing. You did some fishing your own.
Deep sea fishing yesterday.
That's
Caught
great,
some
too.
sculpin. Good fish tacos. Good fish tacos, but not
couple
fly fishing.
fishermen here, couple outdoorsmen.
Yes.
And you lived in Miami, and you can't go out in a boat.
I can go out on a boat, but deep sea fishing
you get sick.
Yeah, it's too much. The boat, it's not good.